Reconvene the General Fund Budget Committee of Clackamas County after having just recessed for lunch, so thank you very much. I am going to go directly to our County Administrator, Gary Schmidt, to guide us through this next section of our budget. Gary, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Parks. We are finalizing our department presentations for the afternoon. We are still on internal service departments, and these are departments that support all 5 of the board's strategic priorities. The next department is County Administration. I will present this budget. We are now in tab 24, and I'll start with tab 24, page 5. Tab 24, page 5. First, the mission of county administration is to provide leadership and support services to the Board of County Commissioners, county departments, and members of the public so that everyone feels that they receive and experience transparent, responsive, and effective government. We have a small but mighty department. You can see on tab 24, page 5, the general roll-up for the Office of the County Administrator. There are 4 programs within county administration: the Office of the County Administrator, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Performance-Clackamas, and the Board of County Commissioners, yourselves. The total budget for the department, requested budget, is $10,493,704, which is a reduction of 14% from the current fiscal year. The general fund to this department is approximately $4,820,429, which is a 3.2% reduction from last year, a $160,531 reduction. I asked every department to make reductions. I felt I should do it too, so we've done that here in county administration. The Office of the County Administrator is funded by 3 funds: the general fund, allocated costs, which other departments pay to our department, and most recently, ARPA funds. ARPA. I will now move to tab 24-7. Tab 24-7. These are more details of the entire department. And quickly, I do want to introduce the leadership team of the department. Nancy Bush is County Operations Officer. She's working in elections right now, so is not here. Martine Koblenz is the county's Equity and Inclusion Officer. She's in the audience today. And Shannon Bays is the Administrative Services Manager for the office, and she's sitting right here acting as clerk today. So thank you to the leadership team. So again, on the revenue for this department, for this office, quickly, federal, state, and gift donations, that's ARPA. That's entirely ARPA dollars. Charges for fees and fines, that is allocated costs. And then general fund. That's how the department is funded, and it's a general 15% reduction overall. There was an ARPA accounting error where inadvertently $6 million of ARPA dollars were put into this department, which was not accurate. It should have only been $4 million, which is for the nonprofit support. We decided staff-wise, let's put this in county administration to distribute. So $4 million of this entire budget is ARPA dollars dedicated towards nonprofit support, which the Board of Commissioners approved previously. So there was an accounting error, which is really why you see those reductions. It's because we got 6 by accident, 6 million we returned 2, so it should have been 4 million. That really explains why you see most of the percentage differences here. Under expenses, we're basically people, mostly, and that's our fantastic staff, personnel services. That includes you, Board of County Commissioners. There is an increase of 9% total, of $338,509 increase. All of our staff are outstanding, and most of them have worked here many years, and therefore they're near the top of their pay scales. Therefore, that's why the personnel costs are a bit higher for our department. And then materials and services, beyond our general office supplies and programs. This does include what was formerly in the non-departmental account. You may recall last fiscal year, I moved approximately, I think it was $2.5 million of contracts, programs, and services that were formerly in the non-departmental account, that were county-wide programs or services or contracts, and moved them to the Office of the County Administrator because in my mind it was not very transparent when it was in the non-departmental account. Elizabeth talked about that earlier. It's just a line in finance. There's no director. Money comes in and out, but it's really not adequately explained where's it going and where. So now in the Office of the Administrator, I feel it's a little more transparent of where the money comes in and where the money goes out. So that really is why that materials and services line is so large. As far as FTE, I'm sorry, there was an error in the FTE line. Basically, we are adding 1.8 FTE to the office. 0.8 of that is a limited term position to help distribute the $4 million of ARPA funds to nonprofits. When those funds are distributed, the position ends. So it's only up to 2 years max, and then that position will disappear. So that's 0.8. And the other 1 FTE is mixed between a 0.5 addition to an executive position role, because the board, we support you greatly, we love what you do, and you take a lot of work. So we need an extra 0.5 staff to help support the work of the board in our office. And then all of our policy advisors were originally, most of them were working a 37.5-hour work week. And we asked them if they'd work a 40-hour work week, and they agreed, which means we had to do 0.2 increase to the FTE count for, I think, 3 of our policy advisors, all to come up with approximately a 1 FTE increase. So I know we're trying not to add staff, but I do feel this was necessary to help support the function of the Board of County Commissioners and our County Administration Office in delivering outstanding support to the board, our departments, and the public. And again, 0.8 of that will go away in a year or two when the ARPA funds are distributed. While it's not listed here, I do want to call out, because I know you'll ask, where did we make these reductions in the general fund? So here's what I kept. I did keep, or I'm proposing to keep, the small grants program, which has been very popular with our boards, prior boards. It's proposed to remain at $250,000. So that is in the materials and services line. $250,000 remains for the small grants program. The Museum of the Oregon Territory, I'm proposing we continue to offer support to the Museum of the Oregon Territory at $100,000. That's how much we paid this current fiscal year. Here are the changes, though. The Clackamas County Arts Alliance originally was in the tourism budget, but we transferred that to county administration last year. They received this year $183,205. I am proposing we reduce that to $100,000 to be more equitable with the funds we're giving to the Museum of the Oregon Territory. So they're both at $100,000. The Regional Arts and Culture Council, or RAC, R-A-C-C, did receive this year $62,250, and I am proposing that is reduced to zero, to none. And the reason for, and here's the options though, for both the Arts Alliance and the Regional Arts and Culture Council, they can apply for the new grant program we're going to propose to you, commissioners, using our county's economic development lottery dollars. The board, you've agreed for staff to come up with a proposal of how to distribute some of those funds to the community, businesses or nonprofits. Certainly, Arts Alliance and Arts and Culture is a form of economic development, so they can apply through a grant program for those funds if they wish. So we're not saying no forever, but offering them a lifeline for that other funding source. But in this proposed budget, no longer from the general fund. So I want to draw that to your attention. The big one, I had something I called the Administrator's Fund, which was budgeted at, are you ready, $500,000 a year, that I only spent, was not spent unless the board directed me to fund a program or service that was not budgeted in any other department. I just call it my fund that's available in case the board had an initiative or a program they wanted to fund that was not budgeted anywhere else, such as sponsoring programs, board, recent things you funded, Veterans Memorial, support for those in Ukraine, my mind's blanking, several things like that. That came from the Administrator's Fund. It was $500,000, rarely spent that much, returned it all to the general fund if it wasn't spent. But to help reduce the budget, I've reduced that down to $150,000. That's it, $150,000. Now, the good news is you've hardly ever gone over $100,000, commissioners, year to year. So I felt this was a reasonable place to reduce that because we weren't spending it anyway. Returned it to the general fund so other departments could use it. That's the department budget. It's pretty, I think, bare bones. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, for your presentation. I think you outlined, my first question, I think you outlined it. What were the reductions? So, and I'm glad to know that, we have experienced, you've been understaffed, you haven't been able to fill the positions you added to that. We appreciate that, and that's helps you, help us by delegating a lot of work that needs to be done. So I support all of that. In my conversations that we've had today and yesterday, and I was driving to my commitment here earlier during lunch, it struck me that a lot of the challenges I have here, I didn't have before. And I realized, for example, that there was graphs in the previous budget that were built in every department. There were graphs, we had it, and we could foresee things. So they're just not here. And so that's kind of gives us some, or doesn't give us really all the tools that we had. So it is a tool, as simple as that. The other one here that I'm struggling with, and this is a great demonstration, you've explained it, so I'm not challenging anything here, but when we budget for something this year and the prior budget, we ought to be looking at the percentages of the change of that versus having this outside influence of vacancies or some other money streams, because it doesn't put value into that far left column or the far two left columns, right? Whether it's change, it doesn't really reflect what it's supposed to reflect. It's supposed to reflect really the change of the budget or trends, right? And with these fluctuations of vacancies and everything else influencing that, we're flying blind. So that's just a recommendation maybe that we kind of go back and see how we can just maybe change the columns to make them more, to give us more insight where things are headed.
That's excellent feedback, Commissioner. Thank you. I recall similar feedback in prior years, which was why we added my memory is added the projected year end for the current year, because we'd always list what the proposed and the amended budget was, but not the actuals. And you don't have the actuals for the current year because it's not over yet. So we added the projected, but you're absolutely right. Ideally, we'd have the actuals for this year so you can see a clean analysis between the 3 years. But we can add as many columns as you like, commissioners or committee members, to make this really clear where the trends are. We'll think how we can do that.
Yeah. And I apologize for really all the struggles I've had. I just realized that driving at lunchtime that we didn't have this problem before.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, we have Commissioner Shull also in queue. So Commissioner Shull and then Commissioner Smith.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Administrator Schmidt, for the good briefing. On the tab 24-25, on ARPA funds under equity, inclusion, and diversity, I understand that some of the ARPA funds meant for business support that was to be administered through Business and Community Support Department didn't get administered. What is the intent for this $4 million at this time, and can it be brought back into the general ARPA pot for the board to look at how that might be better used?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Shull. So right now in this budget, the $4 million is simply the nonprofit money the board has authorized of ARPA dollars to distribute to nonprofits. I think it's $3 million or 3.5 for business support is still within the Business and Community Services Department budget, economic development. And you're right, Commissioner, I told you previously, I think all commissioners, actually we've not distributed that entire $3 million yet, for a multitude of reasons, but we've not. So that is an option, commissioners. You could decide, well, since it's not gone out yet, maybe you'd like to reallocate it, or we're actually just now starting to do the distribution process. So I can bring that back to you at a normal issues discussion in the next week or so if you'd like to discuss that.
And my next question is, on the 0.8 FTE in your department that you intend to use for distribution of nonprofits, isn't there adequate personnel at BCS to do that?
No, and that's why, in fact, they have distributed the $3 million yet, is because staff is so strained with their day-to-day work and handling these multiple crises we've been dealing with lately, they haven't. So this was the idea for us in admin, hiring someone 0.8 part-time, limited term to help distribute the nonprofit dollars.
Okay, one final question on that part. Is it still, at this point in time, after the COVID business problems and reduction in business, is it still a good idea to use that $4 million for business support at this time?
For the $3 million of ARPA dollars for business support, which again is in Business and Community Services, not county admin, I believe so, but that's certainly a policy decision for the board to have. So happy to bring that back to you as soon as next Tuesday.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Commissioner Smith and then Commissioner Savas.
Gary, your last line is a percent change from the prior budget year. And Commissioner Savas, when you mentioned that you wanted a graph to indicate this line, is that what you were asking for?
Well, actually, it would be a graph and a setup similar to what it was before. So it would be a graph, but it would show the line, but in the functional way that the line would be reflective of what was budgeted, not what was actual. Because the actuals, let's say a vacancy or something like that is altering that number, so it's skewing the numbers. So, but essentially, it would be a graph that would show the actual budget amounts to show the trends without any external influences such as vacancies or a grant or something like that.
We actually used to have that in this budget book 2 or 3 years ago. There was a graph of both FTE counts and the overall department revenue and expenses. So we did used to have those charts in these books. Happy to bring them back. We can talk about that on the finance team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
What was I going to say? I just got my train of thought switched around. Oh, I know what I'm going to say. So on the conversation you had with Commissioner Scholl with regards to the nonprofits and the distribution, and the reason you answered, Gary, which is valid, don't question that. I thought our new members of the Budget Committee ought to be aware, and it also was a reminder that the challenge with a lot of our grants, depending on where the money comes from, whether it's CARES Act money or it's ARPA dollars or whether it's Metro Supportive Housing dollars, whatever it may be, that the management administration of that and the monitoring is a lot of work. It's a lot of staffing, and it comes with a lot of responsibility. Whereas in some cases, if we don't spend it correctly, we got to use the general fund to back that back up, right? So if we make a mistake, and let's say it's $1 million mistake, and it wasn't really eligible for CARES Act or for ARPA, we had to backfill that with general fund, and we discussed that last year. But the significance of the supportive housing dollars and all these other things, I'm going to be more proactive here forward in trying to make sure that we've got the staffing in place, and we certainly don't even have it to distribute this. So my question to you, Gary, is how do, with all these external monies going out to nonprofits and others, how do we have that under wraps, or should that almost be a department in of itself? I don't know. I mean, I'm not making any suggestions, but I'm just kind of concerned that it's costs so much. Is it sometimes worth the effort in cost?
Excellent question, and yes, you're absolutely right. So that's part of why staff, commissioners, at the most recent ARPA funds you distributed a few months ago, you allowed administrative support, administrative costs, so we could hire some temporary folks to help distribute these funds. That's why I allowed Elizabeth to grow her staff slightly in finance, because all this money has to be tracked by our finance department. So we've added, since the pandemic, we've added $400 million to the county's budget, simply by these one-time only monies from federal and state sources, yet our staffing was remaining the same to distribute it. So that's a long answer to your question. I feel we're able to manage it now with these strategic staff additions I've given to departments and the temporary staff, limited term staff we've hired to help distribute these funds and get them out the door. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, shall we move on to the next section?